First thing you should consider, everything you've been taught in school about the Earth, its inner structure, its chemical makeup, it's always been just a theory. Never once has the current theory of the inner Earth been scientifically proven. It's simply just a theory. So let's look at another theory. Many modern scientists and geologists have a theory that the Earth is hollow. This isn't a new theory either. I found amazing amounts of history dealing with the hollow Earth. The Greeks, Romans, Egyptians, Sumerians, Aztecs, Buddhists, Hindus, Japanese, Tibetan monks, and many others. Modern scientists say HAARP is used to detect any underground gases, minerals, and matter of any form, so it could certainly be used to size and research the inner Earth as well. The North Pole is said to be the main gate for the hollow Earth entrance. And on a side note, did you know the government doesn't even allow flight over the North Pole? It's true. Look it up. December 1st, 1959, the U.S. took initiative and 47 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty. It specifically states in Article 1, area is to be used for peaceful purposes only. After this treaty, the government took over this area, and public knowledge is now prohibited. February 2006, an international treaty was signed called the Data Denial Act. It specifically bars the release of any data from satellites above the 70th parallel or the North Pole. This is an actual law that was passed so that we wouldn't know anything about the area. On another note, but in part with this research, it was also questioned, if humans are the supreme race, then why are we not built for the Earth in a more supreme form? Mammals are definitely built for the Earth's surface much differently than man. Our skin's not even suited for the Earth's surface like a mammal. We have to protect ourselves from cold and heat. They have fur and skin built for these conditions. They have 4 legs designed for survival of the terrain. Their eyesight, it's much greater than a human's, especially at night. Animals have better hearing, smell, strength, the list goes on and on. Could it be that we're not built for the structure of the Earth's surface? Did you know 90% of a human's DNA is the same of a mouse? And 96.7% the same as a chimpanzee? That little percentage makes a huge difference, right? If we evolved with these animals, why are we not built more like them? Maybe the answer is, we didn't. If we evolved with the plant life on the surface Earth, then why do we have allergies? And animals do not. The only difference that makes us supreme is the intelligence. Perhaps humans were created or evolved somewhere else. And this hollow Earth theory may be the real scientific explanation for evolution of man. Did you know the oldest land to be recorded on Earth is nearly 4 billion years old, but the oldest seafloor to be measured is only 200 million? That's a big difference. So why such a big difference? Some scientists speculate that the Earth is expanding, and at one point of the Earth was nothing but land. When it expanded, the land split apart, and the water from the inner Earth made it surfacing. This explains the difference in the age of surface land versus the ocean floor. Did you know sea levels over time have risen over 100 feet and ancient cities are being found on the ocean floor? Fossils are not the results of normal conditions or natural cycles. When plants, animals, or humans die, they decay into nothing. A fossil indicates a swift burial, providing extinction level events. Coal is also evidence of cataclysmic events. Most deserts at one point were habitable, like Egypt, for example, which proves a major worldly change. Evidence shows that deserts may be the result of sandbars once underwater. Dr. Mark D. Ewan of the Cranbrook Institute of Science found snails, shark's teeth, and even a whale skeleton in the deserts of Egypt. Perhaps the Great Flood can explain this. Most ancient cultures spoke of the Great Flood. In fact, the Sumerians from 6000 BC were the first to tell the story of the Great Flood, exactly how it's told in biblical terms today, as a matter of fact. Many places that are no longer habitable, they used to be full of life, and this shows huge changes that the earth has undergone. So if this Great Flood was real, where did all the water come from? And then where did it all go? Scientists and geologists are now saying there may be gases and oceans inside the earth that will pressurize and spew out, perhaps creating a great flood. Another thing that doesn't exactly add up here are ice ages. The process of an ice age would be a slow process, but it was proven to be immediate, not over time. This is a drastic earthly change that cannot be proven properly, and if the tectonic plate theory manifested in the 1960s was accurate, then ocean floor ages should still be similar to that of the land. There's just too many unanswered questions. Stop me if you heard this one. A Hopi Indian, a Tibetan monk, an Icelander, and a Nazi all walk into a bar. The bartender says, "What could these people possibly have in common?" Believe it or not, they all believed in the hollow earth, and they also believed it's habitable. Some say this is where the Garden of Eden is. Some believe this is where Atlantis is. Some people believe UFOs are actually returning to the inner earth where they live, and they search space just as we do. Did you know that Dalai Lama said the inner earth was absolutely real, and the Tibetan monks refused to tell of its entrances? The Tibetan monks call the inner world Shambhala. Some people truly believe the inner earth is a huge government cover-up. But could the government really be covering something like this up? I found some pretty incriminating evidence, and I also found that the US funded a military project with Admiral Richard E. Byrd, but I'll get into that later. Indians of the Amazon believe aliens will come to us from the inner earth in the 21st century, but they'll come to help, and they have been helping us since the beginning of time. The Smithsonian Institute was actually created originally to house the items found on the expedition to the inner earth, which President John Quincy Adams signed off on. Hitler, the occult, and the secret societies of the world, they believed God lived in the hollow earth, and they believed it was a habitable region called Agartha. Many believe Hitler, along with all of his jewels, golds, and possessions, were taken by submarine to the inner earth. And one thing to note is that Hitler's remains and possessions were never found. Dr. Raymond Bernard is one of many that have gone on the quest for the hollow earth and have never returned. Are they actually making it there, or just dying trying? The Tibetan Buddhist monks have many scriptures and images graphing the inner earth. The Icelandic government is currently funding a project to the earth, along with other scientists and geologists. Douglas Hoffman is the operations manager for the ISCE, the International Society for a Complete Earth. He urges geologists and scientists to help on this expedition. A lot of people really believe in this theory. The builders of the Rosslyn Chapel in 1442, which is well known for being built in the legends of Freemasonry, directly above the altar is carved a hollow earth with a sun in the middle, which is exactly what modern scientists and ancient stories speak of alike. There is supposedly a sun in the center of the earth, and it's also said to be the land of the giants, where humans are much larger as well as food and animals. Believe it or not, dinosaurs are still said to live in the hollow earth, and that could possibly explain why we found prehistoric animals more along the Atlantic than anywhere else. The hollow earth could also explain why our magnetic field is branching into two different trajectories, simply because of the openings at the north and south poles. Think about this. The second shock wave felt by earthquakes could also explain the vibration of a hollow inner structure. The researches of Jan Lambert gives us the science behind the hollow earth theory and the book entitled Hollow Planets. He spoke of the Apollo 12 seismic experiment where they crashed a rocket to the moon and realized that it vibrated for about an hour. He used the exact words, "It rang like a bell," indicating it may very well be hollow. Some scientists believe every planet in our solar system is hollow. Dr. R.W. Bernard wrote a book entitled The Hollow Earth, also showing the legitimate science behind the theory. New earthquake data also indicates the Earth may be hollow by its vibration graph all around the world.
Our La-Z-Boy furniture is a part of the family, and it knows a lot about us.
Our sofa knows all of our favorite snacks.
Our coffee table knows the winner after every game night.
And our chair could tell you just how well I handle scary movies, like a champ.
The point is, a lot of life happens in the living room, and thanks to La-Z-Boy, we always live it comfortably.
Find the comfort you need and the style you love.
La-Z-Boy, live life comfortably.
Did you know mainstream scientists are now saying humans may be 40,000 years older than they originally proclaimed? Do scientists really know anything? Or are they just governed to say certain things? That seems more likely if you ask me. No scientist fully understands gravity either, and it too is just a theory. Some say gravity pushes, and some say it pulls. There was a mathematician named Leonhard Euler who is regarded as the father of modern mathematics. He's regarded as an absolute genius. He wrote some books on physics, and he specifically wrote gravity could not be an attraction. It could only be a pressure. This would also make sense with the hollow earth theory. Scientists have said for decades there are more principles to gravity than we know of. There is no material known to man that can flow beneath the depths of 150 kilometers. Therefore, there should be no seismic activity below 150 kilometers. But the reality is that we're recording earthquakes over 700 kilometers beneath the earth. Recently, there was an earthquake in South America 700 kilometers deep that was literally felt in New York City. So that means there are rocks fracturing below the surface where conventional science is saying it's impossible. There are records of over 25,000 earthquakes below 150 kilometers. Another clear scientific fact is, they say gases rotating created the Earth. Well, if you have a cloud of gas rotating, the centrifugal force would cause it to form a circular layer, or crust, with a hollow center. And this would expand to a certain point, and the faster it spun, the larger it would expand. And note that the larger planets in our solar system, like Saturn, it spins faster than the smaller planets. So this all adds up with the hollow earth theory. Think about this. Did you know an atom is also hollow? It just seems like the basic concept. If you think about it, the hollow earth theory really starts to form a solid argument with just some simple science involved. Theoretically, the model of the hollow earth would work just as well, if not actually better, than previous theories and teachings. There is a lot of scientific evidence supporting this theory, but mainstream geologists and our government, they won't fund the project in full spectrum. And why do you think that is? That's because the US already did it. The US funded a major mission with Mr. Admiral Byrd in the 1940s. And guess what? They found it. Byrd went on record to talk about it, and then he was blacklisted. The Arctic and North Pole are completely controlled and owned by our government. Only scientists with proper clearance can enter these zones. There's actually proof of underwater military bases in the Arctic where this opening would be. You have to wonder, is this really just a coincidence? A man named Dr. Cook took a picture of what is called Bradley Land, or otherwise known as Crocker Land. These are supposed mountains at the North Pole, but these mountains don't show up on maps. However, an American scientist named Dr. Harris had an article in the National Geographic around 1904 which proved there was something in the North Pole blocking the flow of water. He said that the way the tides moved along the northern coastline of Alaska show and explain that there's a body of land north of Alaska. And this is the reason why the tides are different in the east and the west. Many explorers say the mountains that are seen at the North Pole or Crocker Land will recede back further and further the closer and closer you get. And this is why it's believed to be a mirage. A scientist named Commander Green wrote in a 1923 Popular Science magazine that there was land the size of Pennsylvania at the North Pole. There seems to be evidence of something being there, and it seems to have too many secrets surrounding it. Normally, where there's a secret, there's a hidden truth. Admiral Byrd is not the only one to make it inside the Hollow Earth and tell of it either. Olaf Jensen wrote a book entitled The Smoky God, explaining in detail his findings in the Hollow Earth. He said giants approached him there, speaking in a strange language, and an inner sun illuminated the sky, but not bright and hot like the sun in our atmosphere. There's also several other books dealing with this theory and the supposed evidence of the Hollow Earth. Here's a story for you. The Eskimos of Greenland said the Vikings who used to live there moved to a much warmer island that could be found by walking the North Pole for about a month. We have evidence of this Viking civilization, but no record of what happened to this group of about 9,000 Vikings. We found their homes, their personal effects, but not them. In 1957, a U.S. Navy ship recorded seeing aircraft diving into the ocean. William Cooper was in the observation tower. He called several others over to view, and eventually most everyone on the ship watched these spaceships flying and diving into the waters. It was put on record. However, they were sworn to secrecy on any related information regarding this matter. Also on record is proof of spacecraft and unidentified objects moving underwater faster than any man-made craft is capable of. I'm going to let you in on a dirty little secret amongst paleontologists. They found that when constructing large dinosaurs, it simply didn't work. It didn't make sense in the aspects that the dinosaurs were too big to function properly. Meaning, in more detail, the tendons would have pulled loose from the bones, and the bones in the feet would have been crushed and smashed by the dinosaur's weight. An explanation for this is that something changed the force of gravity on the Earth's surface. And maybe that's why dinosaurs are in fact extinct, and nothing is their size today. If the Earth were to change its rotation from a pole shift, this could likely change the gravity on Earth. And if the Earth is expanding like they believe, I imagine over time this will change gravity too. There's supposedly a report from an Area 51 employee who spoke out and said there was 5 levels to the Earth. 5 different species living in these levels. Admiral Byrd's family went on record to say they believed he went to the inner Earth. Jan Lambrecht is currently trying to facilitate an expedition to the Hollow Earth. There is a lot of activity based around this subject. In conjunction with this theory, The unexplainable phenomenon of the aurora, or the northern lights, it's said to be the sun shining from the entrance of the North Pole. And if you look at a global view of the northern lights, oddly enough, it's a circle. Again, giving the idea there may actually be a hole in the pole with an inner sun. Now, did you know there is only 3% natural water resource in the entire world, and it's made up mostly of the Arctic? Perhaps fresh water is coming from the inner Earth. It's strange also that it would be concentrated in an area where the opening would be. Also, if you notice, in almost every photo shown of the Earth, it's not shown from the North or South poles. Based on the research of Dr. Brooks Agnew, a featured scientist on HAARP who entered the U.S. Air Force in 1973, became an electronics engineer with a bachelor's degree in chemistry, a master's degree in statistics, and a PhD in physics. He too is leading an expedition inside the hollow Earth. This is a well-renowned and accomplished individual who also truly believes that the Earth may in fact be hollow. Did you know, in medieval times, it was forced in education that the Earth was the center of the universe and everything else revolved around it? This was a theory that was around for about 40 years before it was proven wrong. So is it possible that the current theory could be wrong? Earlier I mentioned Admiral Byrd, but what I didn't tell you is that the U.S. Navy funded a project called Operation High Jump. This is where Byrd was in charge of an entire Navy fleet made up of about 30,000 troops. On December 2nd, 1946, Byrd announced his expedition for military purposes, but he couldn't go into detail for the public. Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal gave Byrd his final orders before his departure. The White House gave approval for the expedition, and they called it the greatest polar expedition in history. Pack ice was the biggest problem on the trip. They had an icebreaker ship specifically for this, and they made it to the rendezvous point where Byrd took over the expedition in flight. On February 19th, 1946, after all planes returned as scheduled, Byrd's airplane went missing for 3 hours. He documented the entire account. Byrd documents at 915 hours, and the distance appears to be mountains. 1,000 hours, we are crossing over a small mountain range. Beyond the mountains appears to be a valley with a river running through it. Note there should be no green valley below. 1,030 hours, we're encountering more rolling green hills. The external temperature indicates 74 degrees. The navigation instruments are spinning, the gyroscope is oscillating back and forth, and the light here is changing. 1,130 hours. A city is spotted, and the countryside is more level now. Disc-shaped objects are closing in. 1,135 hours. A voice transmission says, "Welcome to our domain, Admiral Byrd. We will be landing you in 7 minutes." And somehow, they've taken control over my ship. After landing, Byrd was taken to a city by tall, blonde men. The city seemed to be made of crystal-like material. Byrd was brought to a master, who said, "You are now in the domain of the Ariana, the inner world of Earth." He said they were thousands of years beyond our race. The master also said he made several attempts to contact our race, but it was immediately met with hostility and that their crafts were fired upon. He went on to say that the human race was at the point of no return and would never survive because of atomic energy. Well, on March 5th, 1947, there was a quote from Byrd in the El Mercurio newspaper of Santiago, Chile that said, Today, I declare it is imperative for the U.S. to initiate immediate defense measures for hostile regions and crafts that can travel through the poles at incredible speeds. Soon after that, Byrd was summoned for urgent hearings before the U.S. Parliament Inquiry Commission in Washington. Byrd officially stated his full discovery on March 11th, and the president was soon advised. Byrd was detained for over 6 hours. He was interviewed over and over by top secret officials and medical teams. He was placed under strict control of national security provisions and ordered to remain silent. In 1949, Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal was put in a psychiatric hospital where he was prevented from seeing or speaking to anyone, even his own wife. And it was because he was telling people of the inner Earth discovery. The truth is, you can watch every major news channel and read every major paper in the world, and you may know 5% of what's truly going on. If you step outside of the box that you've been placed in, perhaps for the very first time, some of the most undeniable findings are hiding in plain sight. So could this theory be real? Sure. Scientifically, is it possible? Yes. Is there evidence proving the theory? Yes. So it is absolutely possible. But the question is, do you believe it?